2 chapters today, and that would be Shell Cottage and Gringotts. None of their plans ever go, well, according to plan, do they? But we're tracking down all of our Horcruxes. So now that we've started checking along, we're just going for it. Going for it. And specifically after Horcruxes, we do sort of have Harry trying to deal with the results of his choice not to go for the Hallows and not to race Voldemort for Dumbledore's wand. Though I do like to point out that Hermione is probably very correct in saying that I'm pretty sure Harry could not have broken into Dumbledore's grave, like his tomb, and stolen the wand. I sort of hope that Snape fixed that before like any student saw. Like, let's just put another lid on that. Now, what I would like to talk today about would be how we perceive the world around us. Because we do have, at some points, some very apparent accounts of this. For example, we've got Griphook that we have to take into account. And Bill's warning that goblins think differently than human beings do. They perceive the world differently. So when Harry's bargaining with the Sword of Gryffindor, it needs to be something he takes into account simply because Griphook isn't seeing it at all in any way a wizarding item. He is seeing it fully as a goblin item because that's how they perceive the world. Anything that was goblin made, even if it was paid for by wizards, should be returned to the goblins after that original person who paid for it passes away, which is not how we perceive the world. For us, in the Western Hemisphere at least, a lot of times the acceptance of family heirlooms is an acceptance. Like, you're not looking at it like, I should figure out who this originally belonged to. There are only very rare occasions and rare people who think that. Who think, yes, this should, to sound like Indiana Jones, should be in a museum, or should be returned to its country of origin, or anything like that. Now, oftentimes it's a cool story, it's a cool family thing, and it's going to get passed down through the family. Which is sort of the wizard way of perceiving the world, which is at odds immensely with the goblin way. So, as much as Harry recognizes that Griphook's probably on guard, really the Golden Trio should have been on guard too, because it should have been recognized that in all likelihood, Griphook would be willing to rat them out just as much as they're willing to sort of renege on where the agreement to give, when to give up that sword. Really, when he was sort of faced with that different perspective, he should have either been able to sort of step away from his own and say, literally, once we destroy this thing, or have said to him, fully, it will be returned to you after this is completed, then maybe that would have handled something. Like, to explain it a little more, or to try and be a little more understanding of that perspective. But he doesn't. It's sort of, because he feels bad, because he knows that he's in the wrong by playing off of this sort of contract language that doesn't include when they'd agree to give the sword to him. Like, they're using this perspective, this little loophole perspective that they can work with, but Harry's perspective, even of his own actions there, is sort of, he knows that it's not the way that he should be approaching this issue, just the way that Hermione does, and Hermione's just sort of like, but her perspectives are changing too, because we're then getting her interaction with Bellatrix Lestrange wand, and her saying that it feels slimy and that it feels like it's part of Bellatrix. And Harry just making himself shut up about, yeah, well, before you didn't think wands could do that. Like, he shuts himself up because he recognizes really again that, like himself, her perspectives are changing. That each of these things is sort of hitting her, and she's having to react to that. But it's happening with him too, because he was obsessed with the Hallows shortly before this point, and then everything went wrong, and then he had to let it go. His perspectives are changing, so he can't sort of dig into Hermione when her perspectives are changing too, because his have been challenged just as much. So he's sort of like, let it go. Let it go. Let it go. And then it gets a little weird when they do get towards Gringotts, because we have this acting moment where we effectively have Hermione acting as Bellatrix Lestrange and not able to turn herself fully. She can't quite reach Bellatrix's level. She does a good imitation at certain points, like her response to Travers about, well, maybe my credit is better with him than yours is. And when they confound the guards, and her response of, but you've already done that. Like, she does have moments, but she can't turn herself fully and change her perspective enough not to avoid saying things like, good morning, and looking at people and being concerned for other people. Because her perspectives have changed, but she's never going to get to the point where she can act like Bellatrix Lestrange to that high of a degree. Which again, it makes me curious about, again, actors in our world and their ability to change that perspective even within the same character, and to move sort of with the push and pull of the actual play to make it believable. Because when you are watching a play, it really is those one or two moments that don't quite get to that character's perspective that you can throw you right off. And you're suddenly out of it. You can't follow them along. Even if they have some really good moments. Like, if there are points where you're just sort of like, they didn't quite make it, and you're aware of that, then it can throw the entire thing off. Which, maybe that's again one of the big things that does go wrong here. Though they failed to realize that perhaps this information would have been passed on. So we've got Hermione playing Bellatrix, we've got Ron playing this foreigner, and again, not quite able to get there because he ends up stunning the person who came at Hermione, because Ron Weasley, duh. And then you have Harry, and Harry, oddly enough, seems to be, from his invisible position, the one who can actually turn his perspective well enough, because we've got him in this scene using an unforgivable several times, which is the Imperial curse. And he's had to change his perspective on that because in this moment it is life or death. And he's not at any point meaning for that poor goblin who ends up getting lost under all the burning gold. We can assume that goblin's probably dead. He didn't mean for that to happen, but he made a choice. And that choice was to step across that line and use an unforgivable. And we've already sort of started seeing him do that as well, because he tries to use the Cruciatus curse on Bellatrix, and Bellatrix tells him that you have to mean it for it to actually work. And in that moment he didn't have enough sort of pain and hatred until he could really work himself up to it. But here, the desperation enough, and even then he's sort of like, I'm not sure it was strong enough. Like, they're standing here like idiots, and they're not. He has to use it a couple of times. He has to keep figuring this out, and that's his perspective change. Like, when it comes down to it, his perspective changes to, okay, we need to do what needs to get done. And that's it. That's the choice we have to make. But he certainly also continues not to fully change that perspective. He's not throwing killing curses. Like, when they're coming out against the goblins, he's stunning. He's stunning. Which, again, if he had fully turned to the perspective of somebody like Tom, that wouldn't be stunning. Avada Kedavra. Could you just see him with two wands like do. No, he's stunning, and he doesn't go after Grip Hook. He's got more important things, and while his perspective is changing, it's also his perspective on what to let go. Like, he's recognizing that they're at war, so he's not blaming the goblins for this position, nor is he blaming the dragon. In fact, he seems very much to sympathize with the dragon. Like, he's seeing this tortured creature, and it's sort of like, turns out I don't really much like goblins. A little bloodthirsty, aren't they? And so obviously, and that's sort of the thing, is he doesn't see the dragon as like a tool of the goblins, because his like immediate thought of getting out of here is, okay, we're on the dragon. And then Hermione's like, maybe we help the dragon get out. So they're all like helping the dragon. And they're gonna let the dragon go. Like, they're gonna hop off the dragon and do a like, wait until the dragon flies away. And they're like, cool. It's not like they're trying to control where the dragon's flying or try and kill it to take it down. They're just like, we'll just wait. And then jump off. And that's the key bit here with perspectives changing, is the ability to make those hard choices. Like, when do we cross the line into using the unforgivables, but how do we also keep ourselves from crossing the line of just throwing around killing curses? Like, it's no business of ours. That's different. That's the hard part that you have to sort of look at and say, and that's enough. I've changed my perspective, but I still know I'm not doing that. And this seems to be that moment of, we've been betrayed by these people, and they're attacking us, and we're in pain, and we're in fear, and I'm still not doing that. And just bravo to the entire Golden Trio for pulling this off, while trying to harm as little as possible. Like, they didn't lay siege to the place, and they certainly didn't mean for that goblin to die. I think they would have saved him if they could. But they didn't perpetuate that harm, particularly after Grip Hook betrayed them. They were getting out, and they used stunning spells to do that. And that's impressive, because, again, when you're backed into a corner, sometimes people don't say, and that line I'm not going to cross. They say, if I'm going to survive, I'll cross any line I have to. Okay, I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.